Hey, it's me, Carrie, with another episode of Gardenside Chats. Thanks for joining me today. Today, let's just jump right into it. We are going to be talking about harvesting and curing sweet potatoes inside your house. So, let's dig right in. So if you live in Colombia, you probably experienced some amount of the first frost last night. So if you're like me in my garden, all of my tender things like my peppers, tomatoes, cucumbers, and squash just outright died, amongst other things like basil and beans and stuff like that. So all that's dead, it's done. Now I've just got my greens and my carrots, and I think that's about it. It wasn't so bad in all parts of town. You know, at the Veterans Urban Farm, we just got some, the tips of tomatoes and peppers got nipped, but they didn't outright die. So you're probably experiencing some, somewhere in that spectrum last night with the first frost. Which the first frost, when we plan our gardening calendar based on our USDA zone, we estimate that the first frost is going to be on October 15th. And it doesn't always happen like that. Some years it's in November. One year it was in September. But yesterday it happened on October 15th. So it was right on schedule. So why am I talking about that? Well, today we're talking about sweet potatoes, and sweet potatoes are a tender vegetable. Tender meaning they can't withstand freezing temperatures because the cell structure will freeze and burst, and they can't handle that. When the cells burst inside the sweet potato, that means they die. So you can see some black leaves in this footage. These are the oh, sorry, I'm moving the camera. These are the vines of the sweet potato. They're very and normal, like when they're alive, they're very firm. Right now they're very rubbery. The leaves are wilted and black almost. So, that indicates that the sweet potatoes have died. Now, in an ideal situation, we would have harvested the sweet potatoes first before that happened, but we can still harvest them today. If you still have sweet potatoes in your garden and they got some amount of frost damage like you see here, it's very important that you harvest them as soon as possible. Because that damage, although the roots right now aren't damaged, that damage can travel inside into the root and cause reduced storage life in the sweet potatoes and maybe cause some fungal issues and stuff. So you want to get them out as soon as possible. So what do you do to get them out of the ground? Well, I have my pruners right here. I've got my potato fork right here. I've got go over there, I'll get it later. I've got a box to put them in and a plastic bag and a knife. So, first two things we'll need are these guys. So, sweet potatoes are vines, and usually they're planted around a foot apart. I'm sorry, I'm kind of by myself, so let's try to get that. Okay. So they're planted about a foot apart, but then they vine, so the plant is pretty big. So I'm just going to kind of search around for where, the vines come into the soil, where the sweet potatoes are. So the sweet potatoes aren't throughout the bed, they're just where you planted the plant, back in May or whenever you planted them. So I'm going to do a little searching through the vines. Oh, there's one right here. Okay. So I'm standing right next to one. So I'm going to get my pruners out, and I'm just going to snip all the vines away from, so you can't see that. Let's just do one of these. Can you see that? Yeah, so this is where the sweet potatoes are coming out of the ground. And I'm just going to prune the vines away from that, just to get them free. So now it's not connected to any of the vines, but this is where the sweet potatoes are going to be. So I'm going to tilt you back up. Bear with me. Okay, so now that I've kind of made some room by clipping the vines away and I can kind of see what I'm working with, I'm going to clip a little more just to give myself some more space. Okay. Now I'm going to get my potato fork, and you want to, okay, so one of the worst things that can happen when you harvest sweet potatoes is you skewer them with a fork or you break them in half. So you want to be really careful about that. So what we usually tell people at the Veterans Urban Farm and at the agriculture park where we grow a lot of sweet potatoes is to give like the little stump that's coming out of the ground that indicates where the sweet potatoes are buried. Give that about like 6 inches, 8 inches, something like this away, and then stick your potato fork in that far away. That gives it some breadth, and hopefully you can just kind of like pry the potatoes out of the ground without damaging them with the the tines of the potato fork. I'm not actually very good at doing that. I, often mess up sweet potatoes when I dig them up. So know that, before I show this. I will also say though, that I've also had really good success, eating broken sweet potatoes within a normal amount of time after curing them. So they usually will like heal that wound and you can still eat them. So they're not bad necessarily if you break them. So just know that. Maybe they'll be the ones you eat first though. Okay, let's try. I'm going to tilt you down so you can see. Okay, so right here is where the plant was planted. You plant little sweet potato plants in the spring. So this is where a plant was planted. So because right around here is where the sweet potatoes are going to be, I'm going to stick my fork in, about that far away. Hopefully you can see this, about that far away. Again, my tines are right here, the stump's right here. And then I'm going to just try to slowly pry it out of the ground. I don't know, these are not my sweet potatoes, so I don't know how well these were watered. Sweet potatoes really like to be watered. And I don't know, oh, see, I did it. I don't even know how I did that. So, yeah, as I told you, there's one. Sorry, sweet potatoes. Yeah, so I don't really know what to expect. And I guess that's the thing with harvesting roots in general, is you don't really know what you're getting into until you harvest them because, everything's pretty much hidden from your point of view. All right, let's hope that I didn't mess up any other of my friend's sweet potatoes. I didn't grow any sweet potatoes, so I asked my friend if I could harvest their sweet potatoes, and they graciously said that I could. So here's one. And, okay. So we got a pretty good sized one. Whoa, look at this monster. I nicked this one. Not too bad. Can you see that? There's a little flap right there. It's not too bad. But yeah, that's kind of how they come out, is it's just this little bundle of potatoes, and then some longer roots, kind of like you see here, that just kind of go into the garden bed. But there aren't like sweet potatoes at the ends of these roots. The sweet potatoes are just at the bottom of like the sweet potato stump where it enters the ground. So you don't have to like dig very far and wide for them. They should be right under where the plant goes in the ground. And usually there's like a small quantity of them. This one looks like there's a gigantic one, a medium-sized one, and then a couple small ones. One that I broke clean in half, unfortunately. So anyway, so I'm going to clip these. It's still kind of connected to the ground, so I'm going to clip these kind of like longer lateral roots off. And actually, I'm just going to clip the main stump off. There we go. So this is the big bopper so far. All right, so that's what we've got so far. I can do another one just to kind of go over the same process again. And then we'll go over what it's like to cure them inside your house. Because, curing sweet potatoes for like commercial scale farmers is going to look different than what you do inside your house. Because, as home backyard gardeners, we only have like certain materials and environments accessible to us. So we got to kind of be clever, I will say. Okay, so let's see. Can you see this over here? Okay, here's another one right here. I'm just gonna, can I zoom you in? Or I'll just move you. Come with me. Sorry, bear with me. Where is my next sweet potato? My next sweet potato is right here. Can you see that? I think so. Yes. Okay, so again, we'll just take our pruners. Mine are old. They lock on their own all the time. kind of move the vines back with your hands like you see me doing right here. And then, you're just going to cut the vines off where the plant comes out of the ground. And then to give myself some more room to work, I kind of just cut the vines back even more. Once things die from the first frost, the longer they sit in the ground after they die, they get kind of slimy. So right now these sweet potato plants are kind of rubbery and they're hard to cut, but the longer they sit here, they're going to get like more and more slimy. So I would recommend that you kind of take care of this right away and pull them out and compost the vines or take them to the mulch site, whatever you deem most appropriate. Can you see? Yeah, you can see that. So now I'm just trying to go well around the stump so I don't break any of these sweet potatoes. And just kind of like try to loosen up the soil around the mass of sweet potatoes so that I can get my hands in there and kind of pull them out. Let's see. Did I do a good job? Let's see. So sweet potatoes are actually a perennial where they come from, but they don't live in our environment over winter time. There we go. So it's really the frost that kills them, but if we didn't have a frost here, they would continue to grow. This one doesn't seem to have very many sweet potatoes. This is all this one's got. So this one's a little more puny than the last one. So this is all we got this time. Little guys. Let me get my pruners again. Cut them apart. All right. And then I'm just going to go back with my hands in this general vicinity just to make sure, since that was such a small, oh, here we go, perfect. Since that was such a small amount, I was going to make sure there's another big one. Look, boom. Isn't that fun? Yeah, roots are the best because it's just like, you don't know what you get into and it's just a surprise. Okay, so I'm going to search a little bit more just for, you don't have to go very far again because they don't really like spread out that much. I'm just feeling a lot of clods of topsoil. So I think I got them all. Okay. Yeah, it's just another clod. Okay, so I think you've got the idea. Okay. So, now that we've harvested the sweet potatoes, well, I will continue to harvest the rest of this bed of sweet potatoes, but I'll just move on to the next step, which is curing the sweet potatoes inside your house. So, ideally, okay, so let me back up. Why would you cure sweet potatoes? So there's a couple reasons why you want to cure sweet potatoes. One, they're very starchy right now, and they're called sweet potatoes. So if you eat them right now out of the ground, they won't be very sweet. They're full of starches, and if you cure them, which is just kind of setting them at a certain temperature and certain humidity for a certain length of time, that gives the starches time to convert to sugars. So they become more sweet. In addition to the starches converting to sugars, they also like heal like any of these superficial wounds that they might have, and the skin kind of hardens because right now the skin's very thin, and if I were to rub it really hard with my thumb, it would kind of peel off. But it allows the skin to harden a little bit, which allows it to be kind of like tougher for storage. The harder skin will allow it to retain its moisture a little bit better, and also withstand like being shuffled around and things like that. So, ideally, sweet potatoes want to be cured for about 10 days at like 80 to 85 degrees with very high relative humidity. Like we're talking like 85% to 90% relative humidity. So pretty warm, pretty humid, pretty tropical. These plants come from a tropical environment, so it makes sense that those are the conditions they need. How do you do that in your house? Well, I have never been able to do that in my house. So this is what I've done in my house, is you can cure them at room temperature. So at my house, that's depending, like I don't have the heat or the air on right now. So it's been fluctuating between like 63, I think this morning it was inside, and like, gosh, like it can get up to 80 in my house, like on a day like last weekend. Anyway, so I keep it inside my house, but I keep it in a box in a plastic bag. So that takes care of the humidity element, because these have some moisture. The soil's a little damp, so there's some moisture in the soil, and that will get trapped in the bag. But I'll just let them sit for longer. So I'm talking like 2 to 3 weeks in my room temperature house in a bag that has some holes in it. And that has been enough for me to cure my sweet potatoes for both like longevity and storage, but also to like get that sweet flavor, like the sweet potato flavor. So let's talk about that in practice. So I'm going to go get my box and I will be right back. Okay. It's like I planned this and I didn't, but it just fits perfectly. So I have this like collapsible crate right here that I put a recycling bag over. And the recycling bag fits perfectly. I didn't really intend for that to happen, but it was perfect and it did. So I'm just going to put the sweet potatoes inside this box that's inside this bag. So on one side that's not covered by that bag, there's like holes and stuff, so that will let some of the air out. I'm also going to cut some holes in the top, but we'll do that in a second. So you don't need to rinse off the sweet potatoes if you choose to. I've done it both ways and pretty much had success both ways. But if you do rinse them off, you want to make sure that they're totally dry before you put them into storage for curing. I guess they're not storage right now, but put them in the box for curing. So I'm not going to do that right now. I'm just going to, it's so dry. Even though the soil is just a little damp under this bed, but it's dry. Not a lot of clods of dirt to get off. So anyway, I'm just going to kind of brush it off and even in doing that, I'm kind of like messing up the skin a little bit, so you gotta be real careful. I'm just kind of getting off any of the clods of dirt. This one's good. I'm gonna put it in my box. Oh, this one's too fat to fit through the bag. Okay, I'm gonna put it in my box. And then I've got a couple more to do, this big bopper. So kind of get the dirt off. Like that big chunk I'm going to get off. These look like pretty good sweet potatoes. Sometimes at the Veterans Urban Farm, we get a disease or a fungus on the sweet potatoes called scurf. And the scurf makes the skin like very mottled. But these don't appear to have it at all. So that's great. So things that, mess with sweet potatoes would be, we've had roly-poly damage, and actually I feel like I saw some roly-poly damage, or some damage on one of these. Well, this damage is from me. I did that, obviously. But like I said, this will heal. It's not pretty, so no one would buy this if you were like a market gardener, but I've had success storing these for myself, so hopefully my friends that I'm doing this for don't mind. I don't see, actually, I thought I did, but I don't actually see roly-poly damage. So roly-poly damage would be one. Voles, not moles, vole damage could be a thing. Those are like almost subterranean little like rodents, but they live like at where the soil and the top of the ground meet, and they kind of just live in that little like they kind of burrow, but it's mostly just under grass. They love to eat roots. So those can be a thing if you have voles in your garden. There's like if it's dry and it rains a lot, all of a sudden they'll split just like tomatoes do. So that's a thing. And then once it's split, a whole host of insects can come in. Okay, so that was a little off topic, but those are, the things that you're going to be up against when you're growing sweet potatoes. So, let's pretend I did this whole bed of sweet potatoes, and put them all in this box, but, I just did what I did. So I put them in the box, and then I'm going to bring the plastic bag back over it. So now it's like covered with the plastic bag. I've got a little razor blade that I'm going to just make little like X's in the top. Just to, again, just kind of increase that airflow. I'm gonna maybe make 9 X's, you know, 3 sets of 3. That's probably enough. Okay. So now this is what it looks like. Can you see that? I think so. Like I got holes in it, 9 holes. I got this one whole side that has a lot of holes in it. So now they're ready to take this inside away from a window and store it in their room temperature house for 2 to 3 weeks. So what are they going to do in 2 to 3 weeks? So in 2 to 3 weeks, you can start eating, and those starches have converted to sugars, and they're ready for longer term storage. So this is not their home for longer term storage. This is just for the 2 to 3 weeks that they are curing. So once they're done curing at the end of 2 to 3 weeks, your room temperature house with, you know, the amount of humidity you can provide them in this box in a bag, you can then move them to a brown paper bag. I've used a basket, I've used a crate, in a cooler part of the house. So now we're going to drop down to like high 50s, 60s, so maybe even a little cooler than room temperature. So, you know, just do your best. Again, like, we're home gardeners, you're not going to have the perfect storage condition for everything. Do not, though, put them in the fridge because they are cold sensitive plants. They do not like being much colder. They're only, you know, going down to 50 for long-term storage. So they don't want to be refrigerated. So don't refrigerate them. That will like actually hurt them. But I've kept them before I had a basement. Before I had a house that had a basement, I kept them in like a crate, in a shelf that had a curtain on it, you know, away from like my furnace. And that was the best I could do. And it worked pretty well. Now I have a basement and I'd probably keep them in the basement. And that would be just fine. My friends have a basement, so they'll just keep them in the basement. But you want them in a dark place where they're not going to get sunlight or be disturbed very often, which is why it's good to have them behind a curtain, put a bag, you know, take this crate out of the bag and put a blanket over it. You know, something like that would work. And then at that, you can store them pretty much throughout the winter. By the time next spring rolls around, they're going to be, you know, maybe the smaller ones maybe getting shrivelly. But, you know, they do store for several months. So when you want to eat them, who should you eat first? You should eat the small ones or the damaged ones first, because the small ones are going to be the ones that lose their moisture the quickest because they just have that smaller mass, and the damaged ones, of course, because although they do make a callus over, you know, being cut in half like I just did, or like a, you know, like a split or something, they, you know, that is still a wound that bacteria and stuff could enter through. So you just want to get those out of the way. And leave like these big, well, I kind of messed this one up too, but you know, I did my best. These big, like pretty much pristine ones for like later on, because they will store better than like these guys. So eat these first. Alrighty. Sweet potatoes are super nutritious, super, you know, they very versatile ingredient in cooking, and it's a great fall and winter staple from your garden. So I hope this was informational for you guys who need to harvest your sweet potatoes still, or have maybe already harvested them and are just looking for ways to make them taste a little better and store for the rest of the winter. So that's all I got for you today. Join us on Monday for another episode of Gardenside Chats, where we do Ask an Urban Farmer. I'll probably talk about how to winterize your garden if we don't have any questions, because like I said, all the tender stuff in my garden died last night with the first frost. And we can also talk about season extension, because I've got that up and going too. All right. Have a good weekend. Bye.